This is a short backgrounder to put Imras's voice note earlier today into context about the Malayan Emergency from 1948 to 1960. And please note the dates, 1948 to 1960. We won our independence in 1957, which means it was smack in the middle of the Malayan Emergency. And as a side note, I'd like to register that my late father took a bullet during the emergency. He was shot at by the communists at Jalan Kuchai Lama while he was riding his motorcycle with the payroll from KL to Petaling. So the communists wanted to shoot him and steal the payroll, but he managed to escape. But he took a bullet and he rode his bicycle after being shot, a motorcycle after being shot. So just a side note there.
The Malayan Emergency, 1948 to 1960, a colonial war for hearts, minds, and rubber. The Malayan Emergency was a 12-year guerrilla conflict that pitted British colonial forces and their Commonwealth allies against the Malayan National Liberation Army, MNLA, the military wing of the Malayan Communist Party, MCP. It began on Yiz 16th of June 1948, following the murder of 3 British planters in Perak, and formally ended on the 31st of July 1960, though communist insurgency would flare again later in what became known as the Second Emergency. Though officially referred to as an emergency rather than a war, largely to ensure British business interests like plantation and mining companies could claim insurance, the conflict was, in effect, a full-scale counterinsurgency campaign. At its heart, it was a war over political ideology, colonial power, and national self-determination in post-war Southeast Asia. Origins and outbreak. After World War II, Malaya was still under British colonial rule. The communist resistance, which had fought alongside the British against the Japanese during the occupation, 1941 to 1945, expected greater political participation and recognition after the war. Instead, the British returned with the intent to re-establish colonial control and exploit Malaya's valuable rubber and tin resources, critical for post-war British economic recovery. Tensions escalated when the MCP, a mostly Chinese-based party with Marxist-Leninist ideology, was outlawed after the killing of several European planters in June 1948. The MCP responded by launching a rural insurgency, targeting colonial authorities, infrastructure, and economic assets. The MNLA withdrew into the dense jungles and adopted guerrilla warfare tactics, attacking rubber plantations, police stations, and railways in a bid to overthrow the British and install a communist republic. British response and counterinsurgency. The British-led colonial government declared a state of emergency and quickly mobilized police, local militias, and Commonwealth forces, including troops from Britain, Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, and even Gurkhas from Nepal. Their goal was not only military suppression, but winning the hearts and minds of the population. A key component of the counterinsurgency was the Briggs Plan, 1950, which sought to isolate the MNLA from their support base among poor rural Chinese communities. Over 500,000 people, mostly ethnic Chinese, were forcibly relocated into new villages, which were heavily guarded and fenced settlements aimed at cutting off food, intelligence, and recruits from the guerrillas. These relocations were often traumatic, but were deemed effective in weakening the communist supply chain. Psychological warfare, censorship, propaganda, and community engagement were also employed. British forces offered amnesty to surrendered fighters and recruited indigenous Malays and non-communist Chinese into home guard units, pitting communities against the insurgents. Communal tensions and ethnic politics. The emergency intensified ethnic divisions in Malaya. The MCP drew most of its support from the ethnic Chinese, many of whom had migrated during the colonial era and were treated with suspicion by the British and Malays alike. The Malay majority was largely aligned with the British, due to mutual interest in containing communism and protecting Islam and monarchy. This dynamic laid the foundation for post-independence ethnic politics in Malaysia, with communal identities often hardened by wartime alliances and resentments. The conflict also solidified the Malay elite's partnership with British authorities, culminating in Malayan independence in 1957. End of the emergency and legacy. By the late 1950s, the insurgency had largely been defeated. Better intelligence, diminishing popular support for the MCP, internal factionalism, and international Cold War dynamics all contributed to the weakening of the communist cause. The emergency officially ended in 1960, though a smaller communist resurgence would continue into the 1980s, particularly in border areas near Thailand. The Malayan Emergency is widely studied as a model of successful counterinsurgency. It is often cited by military theorists for its emphasis on population-centric warfare, intelligence, and civil-military coordination. However, its legacy is complex. While British colonial narratives portrayed it as a necessary fight against communism, critics argue it also suppressed legitimate nationalist aspirations and reinforced unequal colonial structures. Modern reassessment. In post-independence Malaysia, the emergency has been remembered in ambivalent and contested terms. Official Malaysian history tends to frame it as a struggle against foreign-backed communist subversion, while others see it as a genuine, if failed, anti-colonial resistance. Only in recent years have more balanced accounts begun to emerge, recognizing both the excesses of the colonial counterinsurgency and the MCP's role in the broader anti-imperialist movement. A heartfelt light. To every soul whose hand did give, you've helped me dream, helped me live. In darkest hours your light came through, with hearts so kind, so pure, so true. Your gifts, like stars in deepest night, have steered me gently toward the light. Each coin, each word, each silent prayer, a thread of hope, so rich, so rare. My eyes once dimmed now seek the skies, and slowly, clearer visions rise. Because of you, I dare to see the world again, its grace, its plea. Your compassion's flame will not just stay with me alone. It lights the way for others wandering through despair to feel the warmth of selfless care. You've shown what love in action means, in quiet ways through giving scenes. You've built a bridge from soul to soul and made the broken feel more whole. So let this thanks rise like a song, a melody both soft and strong. May your example gently call more hearts to rise to give. To fall into the joy of lifting pain, of planting hope where none remains. Your kindness walks beside me still, a light, a love, a living will.
Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to show your support.